This episode is dedicated to that one colleague, the one who refuses to care about their mental health. I really wonder why I'm so sluggish. Why am I so sluggish? I really wonder why I'm so sluggish. You know the one.
Oh, I know.
Welcome to the Emotional Endurance Movement, the only mental health comedy game show that's genuinely curious about how you're doing. I'm so proud to say that we are 161 members strong this week, which means that there are many of us out there willing to check in to the hard work, the fun work, the mixed work of emotional health hygiene instead of checking out. I'm Laurie Sharp-Page, and I want to introduce our perennial contestant, our behaviorist at large, and our regulation realist, Crimson McDonald. And of course, I want to introduce our other perennial contestant, you, the viewer at home, the person who's watching this, completing our weekly survey, doing the hard work of trying to stay regulated in a dysregulating world. Today is brought to you especially by the feeling of the week, sluggish, and the skill of the week, checking your vitamin D. Let's get into it. Every week, we start by grounding ourselves in an insight, just to orient us. This week's insight comes from Confucius. It doesn't matter how slowly you go, as long as you do not stop. I think this is particularly important and especially relevant on weeks when slowly is the best we can do.
This is really important because honestly, this is the one thing that aging has given me, which is patience. Patience and taking it slow and slowing down and respecting that seems to be one of the keys to survival that I'm just kind of figuring out.
We often see ourselves as either we're doing everything or we're doing nothing. And so much of learning how to stay regulated and to cope effectively and to take care of our mental health in this modern world is really about just consistently showing up and showing up consistently with the best capacity you can.
Right.
That's a big part of what we're trying to do here is to get people to take a second, stop once a week, just think about this stuff. Think
Right.
about where you are, what you're feeling, how you're coping, what's going on, what's depleting you. We want you to think about what are those slow, small, baby step pieces that are progress that we quickly overlook or invalidate because they're not the sexy end of the goal that we all just want to rush through and get to, right?
Yep.
A lot of times just showing up slowly. I mean, we all know the story of the tortoise and the hare.
To interrupt you. I don't know if I really know. I just know a rabbit and a turtle raced and the rabbit was faster. Like, I don't know the story. What is it?
You know, I've been thinking as I read my kids' books at night, there's a lot of kids' books that have messages that adults should revisit.
Yeah, and there's a lot that, like, when you have hippie parents that are, like, really freaking weird and you aren't exposed to, like, mainstream pop culture until you're, like, 10, I just don't know these things.
So the tortoise and the hare, it's one of Aesop's fables.
Okay.
The tortoise and the hare are going to have a race. And the hare's like, I'm not even worried about it. It's a tortoise. I'm way better than a tortoise. I'm a hare. I'm going to obviously win the race. Very confident, boisterous. The tortoise is like chill, like, you know, like I'm just going to show up and do my best as I can at the race. One foot, one paw, one tortoise leg in front of the other. I don't know.
One tortoise nub.
One nub at a time. Tortoise is much more grounded, all right? The hare and the tortoise go and they're having the race and the hare's running up ahead. He's like smoking the tortoise, right? As he knew he would be, right? And he's just running up ahead, but then like he's like, well, I'm so fast that I can stop for lunch. I'm so fast I can go do this errand. I'm so fast maybe I'll just take a little nap. And on that nap, his hubris gets the best of him because who comes nubbing by?
The
tortoise.
consistent,
The slow and consistent. And ultimately, the tortoise wins the race. And I assume the hare was shamed, and I hope that he worked through that shame.
Yeah, let's hope. Okay. Thank you for taking me back to the childhood I missed out on. I appreciate it.
So I think the point here is consistency. That's why we make this show weekly. Let's check in on the emotional climate with our emotional weather report, where we name the vibe without judging it talk about what's in the air for our community.
This week, our emotional weather report is looking good overall. So we first asked our users, and as Laurie said, we are getting close to 200 members of the emotional endurance movement, which is awesome. That's 200 of you that are actually investing in your emotional well-being and need to show up regulated. This week, we're pretty mixed on whether we're staying regulated or dysregulated. Well, 83% said it's a roller coaster, and we should expect this because, let's be honest, staying regulated is a roller coaster. There are days that you do it great at work and do it poorly at home and vice versa. So we would expect to see this, I think. I think more importantly, we're seeing more regulated than dysregulated overall.
Yeah, what is dysregulated? Is it 5% that's dysregulated?
Yes. Yep. So we have 5% dysregulated, but almost double that are regulated.
So most people are mostly regulated, but still kind of in like a mixed state. Is that the vibe? Am I understanding?
Yeah, I would take it as people are feeling mostly regulated, but have weak moments. Let's just say.
Oh, fair.
We should say
Very
they're
fair.
weak. They just have their moments where staying regulated is difficult.
Yeah, it is a triggering and challenging time of year, and there's a lot going on.
Well, and one way to see if they're more regulated versus dysregulated is to see how we're coping. So let's see how we're coping overall. So if we look at our users and our members of the emotional endurance movement, 65% of y'all think that you're coping pretty effectively. And honestly, that's a great number. I think we should always try to cope the best we can. And if 65% of us are feeling like we're winning that battle, then I think we need to have a round of applause.
Let's take a look at our top 5 triggers of the week.
At number 5 is guilt. I had to spend some time with this because why are we feeling guilty? This one kind of surprised me. I know post-holidays, there's a little bit of guilt, missing events, not buying the right gifts. And it still seems to be lingering. And I can't help but to wonder if it's almost a chronic guilt due to, like, especially parents in these times. I just feel like cost of living and other dynamics make the word no very common these days in our household. And so I know I personally, when I saw guilt pop up in the top 5, I thought, yeah, I've been feeling guilty because I have not been able to deliver what I used to be able to deliver with the same resources. So I'm wondering if it's something around there. I would love for our members to tell me more about why they're feeling guilt. Are you feeling any guilt, Laurie?
I'm not feeling that this week. No, I'm feeling pretty light, pretty hopeful, which is nice. It's a nice change for me. I've kind of been, I was down for a little bit, as our users know. And I'm happy to say that I'm feeling mostly back. In fact, I would put myself in the 12% regulated bucket.
That's
this week.
amazing. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you've been watching since the beginning, you have seen me slowly claw my way back.
You crawl your way back to regulation. You can always do it. In fact,
you can always get back on the horse. In fact, I stopped beating myself up for falling off the horse. I am now focused on how quickly I can get back on. And yeah, it did take me a couple weeks, but like increasingly every week's been better. So I'm happy to say I am not feeling that way this week, but you know, things are transient.
Well, and let's see. Maybe you relate to the other pressure points and triggers that our audience is struggling with. So number 4, we came in with boundaries. So
yeah.
People are struggling with boundaries. I feel like this should be in the top 5 at all times for a majority of people. When I dug into it, a lot of it was boundaries around work-life balance. My hunch, my behaviorist hunch, is that a lot of us start the new year with expectations that we're going to set these new boundaries with work-life balance and that we're going to come into the new year and build these boundaries. You know, I'm going to work and I'm going to turn off my computer. I'm going to turn off my phone. And it ends up being way harder to come through. And so maybe what we're seeing is number 4 being boundaries, because people are struggling to keep those boundaries in place that they had hoped for at the beginning of the year. And that may be leading to guilt that they aren't able to. And the reason I think to work is because if we go to number 3, we see work deadlines. This is a chronic one too. And
Yeah, this was on the list last week too for people.
I think it's another one that I think it's just going to be hard to avoid it, because at the end of the day, you can't avoid work and you can't fix it. You can't change deadlines. It's top of mind. It's what you're thinking about in the moment.
Yeah.
And work is 8+ hours of our lives a day.
It is a very dynamic, ever-changing thing too.
Well,
Yeah.
and we also put a lot of our identity into it. And so if you are privileged enough to do something you love and you do have the work ethic where you want to do it the best, this is going to weigh heavily. And so I suspect we're going to see work deadlines as a chronic top 5, but time will tell. Which brings us to number 2, and too much to do. I think I can join the club of everyone that said, oh, hit me up in January because things slow down. Have you said that one yet?
Yeah.
Did it slow down?
No.
Not at all. Did it? I mean, right? Like, I don't know why we do this to ourselves. Like, oh, after the holidays, it'll be great. No. So, yes, we're overwhelmed and too much to do. And I think that's because we expected not to be. So, lesson learned, when 2027's rolling up, just plan on January being a busy month and set the right expectations, and it might feel a little less overwhelming because you can kind of distribute the overwhelm to the lead up instead of just spending the holidays like, January is going to be great, because life just doesn't stop. And then number 1, family dynamics. I don't even know where to start with this one. We blame the holidays for it being the list in the past, and now we have to just come to terms with the fact that family and work, I suspect, are going to be pretty chronic. What do you think, Laurie?
Family dynamics. I guess, we start where we left off last week, which is that you're not alone. They're challenging. Hopefully they bring you value. You're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to change your role. You're allowed to set different expectations. People may not agree with them. They may have strong reactions to them, but their reactions aren't your responsibility. Build your tolerance to discomfort.
Yes.
Build it.
You have to, because everything comes with a level of discomfort in this world. And I'm not happy with it, but I can't change it. Trust me, I tried to figure it out for a long time, and here I am. So we had family dynamics, overwhelmed with too much to do, work deadlines, hard keeping those boundaries, and then the guilt for doing so as our top 5 pressure points and triggers this week that made us feel a little dysregulated. So, well, no, you're not alone. It was interesting how much these trended. It was very clear what rose to the top this week.
Now it's time to have a word from our feeling of the week, sluggish. Let's talk about our feeling of the week, sluggish. Sluggish is not necessarily a dramatic emotion. It usually doesn't precipitate in a breakdown, and it's not even always that much distress. Sluggish usually feels like tired and uninspired, heavy and unmotivated, fine, but just not that into it. But here's the important part. Sluggish often shows up as a yellow flag when we're starting to get depleted. That can be depleted from stress, from constant demands, from not coping effectively with our challenges over time. And when our mental health isn't being taken care of, we're often quick to ignore it and continue avoiding it. But sluggish is one of the first signals your system sends. And the good news is that if you identify that you're depleted, you can absolutely do something about it. Change is possible. And perhaps sluggishness just sticks around for a day and you move through it. But if it sticks around for an extended period of time, be thinking about what's depleted within me. So the next time sluggishness shows up for you, I want you to take a minute and actually really think about what are the reasons it's showing up. And we're going to talk about a little bit later in this episode some biological reasons that it may be showing up, which might surprise you. That's all from this week's feeling of the week, sluggish. Now we're going to do something we're very good at for other people and very bad at for ourselves. It's time for our first game, Most Compassionate Take. This is the game where I read you a statement, the thought that many of us may have when we're feeling sluggish or overwhelmed or depleted, and you help me find the most compassionate take. My first negative thought that I want your most compassionate take on is, I should be more motivated than this.
Resting and not being motivated is not a sin. Maybe you should take a minute to yourself and recharge.
Absolutely. Taking them a minute to recharge.
You can tell I'm really good at being compassionate with myself on this one.
Well, I mean, our most compassionate take is one that we usually have to really cultivate, right? That's
Yeah.
why this is a game here. So we're trying to get people to think about this. It's not necessarily easy or automatic, and doing it for yourself is way harder, but
Absolutely.
it is a skill like any other, and it's one that you can learn, and it really just comes down to prompting your brain to build the neural networks to think, what is my most compassionate take?
If I were more disciplined, I wouldn't feel this sluggish.
Discipline is actually a form of love. And if you're struggling with your discipline with yourself, you're struggling with loving and caring for yourself. And many, please hear me, many of us do. Saying that you're not disciplined enough implies that there's something wrong with you and it's going to keep you undisciplined. Saying that you aspire to have more discipline in your life and to care for yourself in a more disciplined way is you showing up empowered and equipped to do so, and with some self-love that's going to motivate you a lot more than the self-hate that goes into that statement. All right, you ready for this one?
Yep.
Other people are handling life better than me.
The truth is, you have no idea what's really happening with other people. You have no idea. I mean, that is what I have learned. You do not know if they're coping well. We don't.
Yep. You really don't know what's happening in people's lives, and we never win the comparison game. So I do think the most compassionate thing you can do with a statement like that is to invite someone off the comparison game.
Yeah.
Because our brain will make it a very clear, like, they win, we lose, when we, to your point, have no idea what's happening with somebody else's mental health journey, relationships, environment. None.
Well, and not only that, but like all of us, I mean, we show dysregulation differently. And this is part of the thought leadership that we're bringing to the table that I think is so important. You know, I was talking to someone and I'm like, well, that's why you're working so much. They're dysregulated. And they completely challenged me on this idea that working too much was a form of dysregulation. And I think that broadening the scope of what being dysregulated is important, because then we can see that it's not always what it seems. That sometimes people look how productive they are. They nailed that meeting. They nailed that presentation. There's no way they're struggling. And they could be caretaking for someone dying of a horrible disease. It's because they were putting 100% into their work as a tactic to cope. And so, to your point, you can't compare. You have compassion for yourself. People come here to be validated in the fact that it is exhausting and difficult to show up regulated, and to accept things that we may think are healthy may not be so healthy.
Also, people pleasing is another one we talk about it as well. People pleasing seems super innocuous. It is ultimately often a dysregulating behavior. It's okay if you find yourself dysregulated. This is one of the reasons why we put out the survey weekly, is to get people to think about whether or not this is something that's happening in their life. Because what happens over time that's super scary is that people get stuck in dysregulation and they stay there. And their lives, their goals, their relationship, their communities all suffer because of it. So we'd like to keep you out of that trap pattern, because that sucks.
Yep. That's a hard
really
thing to
does.
climb out of.
It is a hard thing to climb out. Not impossible. And if that's where you're at, we're so glad you're here with us, because we want to be your weekly on-ramp to learning how to take care of your mental health in a more sustainable, effective, and compassionate way. Speaking of compassion,
Nothing's really wrong with my life, so why am I struggling so much?
that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a pretty general and big one.
So when we say nothing is actually wrong with our life, we're doing two things. First of all, we're using some type of external scale that says what's right and what's wrong. And that sort of barometer doesn't work for our individual lives, because everything is so nuanced, right? You're invalidating whatever discomfort you're experiencing. And so instead of pushing that discomfort away and saying, I shouldn't have that because this criteria for this situation, this challenge, this environment, my life doesn't meet whatever external criteria that's good or bad, all you're doing is pushing away your feeling, which is going to keep you in a dysregulated state. I mean, I think that's one of the most dysregulated states that people find themselves in very easily is they don't know how to deal with their feelings, how to cope with them, how to attend to them in a way that doesn't cause them to spin out. So they just push it down. And what we would like to do is we'd like you to let it out. And if you spin out a little bit, we want to make sure that you've got the support and the tools to stop the spin, know that you can stop the spin, and then start dealing with things head on. You know, that's kind of the developmental pattern that I've seen a lot as a clinician. I've also seen it play out in my own lives and my family members' lives, where, you know, we have a certain level of capacity, we get overwhelmed in that capacity, we shut down the system entirely, which further reduces our capacity. And eventually we hit something called rock bottom. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Luckily, I haven't gotten there yet. I'm just trying to avoid it. But I have my own mid bottoms for sure.
Yeah, mid-bottom. That's the pattern that a lot of people find themselves in, and it feels like there's no on-ramp. And if you find yourself in that bucket right now, I'm so glad that you're here with us because we want to bring you into the fold, let you know you're not alone, and give you some tools to cope with it. All right, I got another good one for you.
Okay.
I'm wasting time.
Oh, I know this one so well. And my compassionate answer to myself when I say that is I've accomplished a lot more than I give myself credit for. But I got to be honest with you. Gosh, I feel that one so much. And I do feel like I waste way too much time scrolling, texting, all of the stuff.
Time's a funny thing. And what I would encourage anybody who has that thought to think about is, are you wasting time or resting? Because rest is not a waste of time.
I think that's where I have the biggest issue. There's a major difference, and I think that's where avoidance is part of this conversation.
Crimson, that was a great round of most compassionate take. I'm going to go ahead and give you 161 points in honor of how many members that we have in the movement this week for doing a great job of bringing us a more compassionate take on some negative thoughts that we may be having, especially if we're feeling sluggish.
Sluggish makes it hard to be motivated to do anything. Laurie, I'm going to give you more points than me. I'm going to give you 1,000 even points because you gave us pretty good responses.
Well, thank you so much. Notice how much easier compassion is when it's aimed outwards versus when it's aimed inwards. And again, this is part of why we practice. Now, let's talk about a skill that helps you support your system before it ever gets to the point of negative and harsh self-talk, because there is a vitamin that may be influencing your mental health and your physical health more than you realize. A word from our skill of the week, vitamin D check. This week's skill is simple but powerful. Check your vitamin D. Vitamin D plays a wild role in both our physical and mental health. It impacts our mood regulation, energy levels, immune function, even our cognitive clarity and sleep. Neurologically speaking, vitamin D supports brain process connected to our mood and emotional well-being. And when our levels are low, people often feel flatter, heavier, or more sluggish. This is why if you feel sluggish for several days in a row, you want to be paying attention to this because it may be more than just your mood, especially if you notice that this is happening seasonally during the months of fall and winter, whatever hemisphere you're in. Calling out all of our fans in Australia, by the way. Good day. If you're feeling sluggish for multiple days in a row, it may be a sign that you are struggling to get vitamin D. Here's why it matters. A lot of people are low in vitamin D and they don't even realize it because a lot of these signs aren't dramatic, they're more subtle. Signs your vitamin D might be low, feeling more tired than usual even after sleeping, low or flat mood, sluggishness or heaviness in your body, trouble concentrating, getting sick more often, or just feeling off without a clear reason. And there's ways to support your vitamin D levels if you are in D low. You can spend more time outside in natural light if that's an option for you. You can use A light therapy lamp. I'm using mine as my lighting. Dual use, dual purpose. This is a full range spectrum vitamin D UV light, and this helps your body to process vitamin D from the light if you are unable to get outside. This is what a lot of people utilize if they have SAD, seasonal affective disorder, as a diagnosis. But anyone can use them. You can find them on Amazon. They're usually between $20 and $40. And you set it up, particularly good to set it up in the morning, maybe when you have your coffee nearby, and put it on you for about 15 to 20 minutes. This will help your body absorb light needed to process and remetabolize more vitamin D. This is one of my favorite coping tools. I love this thing. I've had it for years. And it's really a great tool and toolkit for when the sky gets gray and we're just not going outside a lot. It helps me a lot. And that's all from our skill of the week. And that brings us to our final game. Is this really a thing? Vitamin D addition. We're going to read off a few fun facts about vitamin D, and you decide if this sounds like it's true or false. All right. I've got the first one, Crimson. You ready for it?
Let's go.
Vitamin D is technically not a vitamin.
That was my first one for you. So I know that it's true.
Vitamin D functions more like a hormone than a traditional vitamin. And that's why it is so important across our health systems.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's necessary. You need it.
You need it.
Low vitamin D is correlated with many autoimmune diseases. True or false?
That's true. I know that that's true because of my work with chronic pain and chronic illness clients. Most of them had vitamin D deficiency in their diagnoses. You can live somewhere sunny full-time, year-round, on the equator if you want, and still be low in vitamin D. True or false?
I'm going to say true only because some people don't leave their house. But I'm sure there's a science reason.
Time indoors is a big one, particularly in
Oh.
hot environments.
Okay.
People are indoors almost as much as in cold environments. So you can be down in Florida and still be very low in vitamin D.
That's so fascinating. I was in Florida has a lot of vitamin D deficiencies, which you would never expect, but it totally makes sense because if I lived in Florida with that humidity, I would be a hermit and I would not leave my home. I would just sit by the air conditioner register. True or false? In some northern latitudes, you can't even get vitamin D from the sun.
False?
True, because the sun's angle isn't at an appropriate angle to like actually directly infuse you with vitamin D. So if you live somewhere where the angle is too low, you're actually getting like residual light, but not actual sun exposure. I had no idea.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So like in Antarctica, you don't get vitamin D.
I had no idea that the angle
Yeah.
impacts it.
Yeah, you have to be directly like exposed to the sun, and they aren't being directly, they're just kind of getting residual light from it.
Vitamin D just keeps on
Keep on.
surprising me. Vitamin D deficiency is common even among adults who feel generally healthy.
True.
It's true. Many people don't discover that they have low levels of vitamin D until they've had blood work done for unrelated reasons.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably how you found out, right?
Yep, that's absolutely how I found out. Crimson, I give you 23.5 points in honor of the angle of the sun in the Arctic because you really blew my mind with that fact.
And Laurie, I'm going to give you another even 1,000 points for bringing new information to the table.
That's all for this episode of the Emotional Endurance Movement. Thanks for joining us.
Sure to take our survey because we want you to be part of this. We love seeing the data. I'm a data nerd. Laurie's a nerd. We want to see your data. We want to know what's going on with you so we can bring that here and hopefully address some of your own concerns.
If you want to go deeper with us, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow and take next week's survey. It takes just a minute and it helps us tune these episodes to what's actually showing up in your life. And remember, however sluggish this week feels, you don't have to stop. You can always come back to yourself. Thanks for being part of the emotional endurance movement, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.